Hello everyone, I'm Eichler. I'm here with Professor Mitchang's team and I'm happy to present the contents of our paper today. So my research focuses on data marketplaces, and in our paper we looked at the role of the data provider in the enterprise data marketplace. I'm going to start with a quick introduction. So what are data marketplaces, like who are the data providers, and why is this topic interesting? And then I will move on to current processes for providing data in enterprises today, and what the challenges are in this current process. And then I will move on to how we can provide data through an enterprise data marketplace. I'll talk briefly about how the enterprise data marketplace assists the data provider, and then I'll finish with a quick conclusion. All right, so all of you know this, companies have a lot of data at their disposal today, and our goal is to extract value from this data. For this to happen, we need our employees to use this data and do cool stuff with it, basically. So we want them to find new market segments, or to improve processes, or whatever else. But the key here is we need our employees to use the data that we have. So for this to happen, we need to democratize the data. This is basically just about empowering the employees to find and understand the data, to be able to access and use it. And obviously, we also need our people, our employees, to share the data that they have within the enterprise. Now, there have been studies that show that up to 2/3 of data in an enterprise go unused, and that's quite a lot of potential data value that's not being exploited, right? So we believe data marketplaces are a potential solution to this problem. Data marketplaces are simply platforms for exchanging data. You can use them externally, like between organizations, but I always focus, or I'm focusing on the enterprise data marketplace, which is simply a platform for exchanging data within the company, so for the employees specifically. Today, we are focusing on the provider and this sharing aspect. Okay, just so we're on the same page, quick role distinction. Like, what are we talking about? There is a data producer, they create the data. This could be a person or an application. We have the data owner, they're responsible for the data, so they need to make sure we're using the data according to legal regulations and so on. We have the data provider. They should just make the data available. They could do this through the enterprise data marketplace. Obviously, we then also have a data consumer who then acquires this data. Now, these here are not mutually exclusive. Like, the provider could be the owner and the producer, but they could also be separate entities. All right, so we were interested in the scientific perspective, obviously, so we did a literature study. We also considered white papers in it, but we were specifically interested in the practical perspective. So we conducted semi-structured interviews with a basic set of questions, and with people in different roles, so enterprise architects, data scientists, data engineers, and so on. And we wanted to find out what the employees have to do right now to share data, so what are the steps, what are the challenges, and so on. And in this process, we derive the data provider journey. The provider journey is divided into 2 steps. So we have the publishing of data and then the provisioning options. So basically, when we want to share data in the enterprise, we have to begin with assembling metadata or documentation. So we need to make sure that people can understand the data that we have. So we want to collect information on the business meaning, data quality, lineage, and so on. And then we also have to define a legal usage framework. So who is allowed to use the data for what, basically. Yeah. When we have assembled this information, we have to make sure that people can actually find our data. So they have to know that this data exists. To do this, we have to make it known. So first we have to issue a request to publish the data. This goes to the owner, and the data owner, and then the owner, as well as legal experts, they can check if all of this is all right. They can accept or reject this, so you might have to go back and then redo your legal usage framework. And if everything's all right, then we can publish the data. At this point, we're not actually sharing the data already, we're just making sure people can find it. So actually, we're registering it in tools, like we're sharing the metadata that we have. So at this point, it might be interesting to just know that companies that are building tools like data catalogs, those are just inventories of data. We have data marketplaces, and companies also have stuff like Docupedia or simple Excel sheets and stuff like this. So there's a variety of platforms here where we can, that they use to share what data they have. So we might have to register our data in a variety of tools here. Okay, so up until here, we know what data we have, we can find it, but we cannot access it. So as a provider, we also have to provide provisioning options. Maybe it's currently hosted locally, so I might have to upload it to some kind of system through which I can share it. And then I have to provide provisioning options. So maybe I can enable direct system access. Probably not likely, so I might have to come up with an alternative. Maybe I data into another system like a data lake through which I can then provide access. Maybe I want to provide an API or download options. These down here might require, we might have to implement these, or so we need resources to do this, so we might have to issue another request here. Management will have to approve that we get these resources. Okay, so these are just the basic steps what we have to go through to share data. Now we're interested in what issues a provider might have with these, and we found a few, so here are some of them. For one, the assembly of metadata can be very, very tedious. Everybody knows metadata is important, but people are not very interested in actually collecting it. So if I'm the provider and I'm not actually using the data, so I might not know all of this, it might be very difficult for me to actually find all of this information. And if it does not exist, it has to be, well, extracted from the data. So this can be tedious and time consuming. The second challenge here is about supplying provisioning options. So we want to democratize the data, which means we want to make most of our data available to as many employees as possible, right? So this means we are sharing data without knowing if there is a use case for it. Like, we just want to make sure that people can find it. So it might be a lot of effort for, like, no value in the end. Then we have the issue of registering data in several publishing tools. So as I said, in this process, we might have to register data in 3 data catalogs, a data marketplace, or Datapedia, or Docupedia, or whatever files, and whatever else the company has come up with. And the last challenge concerns the people that are involved in this process. So as a provider, I will have to talk to the owner, to legal experts, to IT, to management, to whoever is using the data, and so on. So, and this through various channels. So it can be kind of, well, also a tedious process. Okay, so we are now interested in how a data marketplace might be able to improve this process and address these issues. And the first thing we did was we looked at what functionality a marketplace provides, and we created this functionality framework. I'm not going to go into this into detail because of time constraints, but we can see there's role-based functionality, so we have functionality for the consumers, like discovery features, trading features, collaboration, and obviously we also have functionality for the provider. So here they have also these trading aspects. So provider, for instance, will have this service access management. This basically means that they get a request when people are requesting the data through the marketplace. They see if transactions have been, they can manage their transaction. They see the subscriptions on their data and so on. They can register new data in the marketplace, import the data and enrich it with metadata, and they also have governance functionality. So for instance, they can decide who can find the data and use it for what, stuff like that. All right, so a marketplace does provide provider functionality. But, as I said earlier, there's also a lot of metadata involved in this process, and research, or there's not much on this topic in literature today. So here we have this cross-sectional area on metadata management functionality. The marketplace needs a catalog, so basically an inventory of the data it's offering. If we have a data entry, we also have to provide metadata so the user can understand it. So this is the data set specific metadata, like the quality, lineage, and so on. And then we also have marketplace specific metadata, like the purchase history, search history, and so on. Okay, so I would like to just point out that the marketplace requires a cataloging functionality. We will need this on the next few slides. All right. But basically what we see here is that the marketplace will help the data provider later on through this provider-side functionality. Okay. So I am trying to figure out how we can implement an enterprise data marketplace so that it will help us with the challenges that we just talked about. And I found that we can address these challenges by distinguishing data assets and data products. So you have data is maintained in some kind of source system, and the source system is registered in a data catalog. Many companies today, catalogs are basically just tools for maintaining inventories with metadata and additional functionality. And when we now go ahead and enrich the data with additional information such as a content description, who is the owner, and so on, then this becomes valuable for our company and it becomes a data asset. This information, like this metadata, is usually maintained within data catalogs. Now, this is great, but it's not enough information for us to currently share the data within our enterprise. So we will need more information, such as what are the terms of use, contract information, like license and so on, and provisioning information. And once we've added this metadata, this becomes a full data product. And this information is maintained in a marketplace. So, as I've mentioned, we already have data catalogs. A marketplace also needs a catalog, so wouldn't it be great if we reuse the infrastructure we already have? So we can build our marketplace on the data catalogs we already have. So how do assets become products? We have a few scenarios here. So for one, we can go into the marketplace now and we can just add the data product. Like we can register our data and add all of this metadata. But we could also go into the catalog and just register the data asset. And then we can still find it through the marketplace since it uses this data catalog. And when I now go into the marketplace, I request a data asset, the provider will be prompted to add this missing metadata. And the third variant down here is that other employees can also go to the marketplace, they can see that it's missing metadata and they can add it for the provider basically. Okay, so why is this great? It's cool because the marketplace will now reference a lot more data than has initially been registered within it. Like it references all of the data throughout all of the publishing tools that we have. Also, the provider only has to register the data in one tool. Like they can go, they can register it in the catalog, and you can still find it in the marketplace. And also, it's cool because they can only register a data asset and not add all of, go have the effort of adding all of this information until it's actually requested and they know it's relevant, and then it's kind of worth the effort. Okay, so we have a marketplace prototype. What could this look like? So if I go into the marketplace, we have a registration wizard here, so I can add the asset. Like the marketplace will then add this entry in the catalog, and then I can add product metadata. So for instance, what is permitted usage, conditions of use, and so on. If I went into the catalog and registered the data there, then I can still find it in my marketplace, just normal search, like this is nothing special, but I can see what is a product and what is an asset. And if I now, as a user, request an asset, then the provider will be prompted to go into the wizard we just saw a second ago and add the missing metadata. And obviously other employees can do this as well, and they will just they just see this information here that they can add the metadata, and then the owner has to check it and check to see if it's all right. Okay, so we saw the steps like a provider has to go through, we saw the challenges, we talked about an asset-product distinction, and I would now like to just point out how the marketplace explicitly addresses these 4 challenges. So the first one was about the assembly of metadata. This is the one challenge the marketplace does not explicitly address. So there are other tools like the data catalogs that have an automated metadata extraction functionality and so on. So if we're building our marketplace on our catalog, we implicitly kind of have it, but the marketplace itself doesn't do it. The second issue was about supplying the provisioning options without knowing if our data is relevant. So by distinguishing these asset and product, we can just only supply the provisioning options when our data has been requested. So we only have the effort when we know people really want to use our data. The third issue about registering data in several publishing tools is also addressed through the asset-product distinction, because we can now go into the catalog, like building the marketplace on the catalog enables us to go into, we can go into only one tool, and we can still find the data throughout the other tools as well. So we don't have to register data now in several catalogs, in the marketplace, and wherever else. We only have to register it in one tool. And lastly, the process involves several people or parties. The marketplace can extract this kind of information from the catalog, like data owners are usually maintained in the catalog, and then it also provides workflows for communication between these people, or also when you have to do the request to management for the resources and so on. So basically it just kind of improves this workflow a little bit there. All right, so I presented the provider journey, challenges that arise from it. We talked about the enterprise data marketplace. We saw that it does offer explicit provider functionality. We can integrate it with existing data catalogs, so we can reuse infrastructure we already have within our company. And by distinguishing assets and products, we then address 3 of the 4 challenges that we face. And in consequence, we support data democratization in our overall goal of extracting more data value. All right, so this was what we are or were working on, and right now we're also looking into topics like incentivations for the providers in the company. So in external marketplace, if we have monetization, so we're selling our data, it's very good money, that's nice. But in the company, we don't want to sell our data because that would be opposed to data democratization. Less people will use it, so we need to come up with other incentivation mechanisms. And we're also looking at how we can provide a comprehensive view on the metadata we have for the marketplace, because currently metadata is spread across a variety of tools, so we want to kind of bring it together and help the consumer on the site. Yeah. Thank you for your attention, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Gröger, for the interesting talk. Please step out.
Yes, thank you for a very, very interesting talk. I liked it a lot. I was wondering if I could ask you about the journey, right? Provider journey. And to me, like, it stopped at the moment that the data product was created on the data market. Is that correct in your picture?
The provider journey itself?
Yes. So one big aspect of sharing, exchanging data is that data changes a lot. Yeah. And use cases that are based on data depend on that, and versioning and new functionality or old functionality going away. Did you also look into that in your data provider journey?
No, we didn't. No, that wasn't represented in this part of the journey, that we're actually keeping track of changes on the data and then updating the metadata on that. So that wasn't explicitly part of it, but we could host different versions of our data in the marketplace. Like you could have the older versions and the newer versions, and in that way, like the provider would always have to add the newer versions and stuff. But well, those would be separate instances in this case.
Oh.
Yeah.
But that's something I hear a lot from data consumers, that they want to make sure that if they build a tool on a data product, that the data product will be there also next week. Right? Because data changes a lot, and also the legacy systems in which data goes will regularly change.
Yeah, that's true. Although I kind of thought that like this kind of information will also be part of the metadata that I provide. Like with the provisioning options, I would say, okay, this data is updated, I don't know, whatever, update cycle once a week, or every day, once an hour, I don't know. So for me, I kind of always thought this is part of the process of the provisioning information that I'm supplying. And then there will be like static data you can just have once and it will be old, and then you will have other data products that actually just evolve over time. Well, yeah, and in that case, the provider will always have to update the specific information, but that was not explicitly part of the journey. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So essentially, you would have all the information to determine how much effort it was to compile the data or to pre-process the data, because you're tracking it through all the steps. I think that's really interesting because I've recently been talking to lawyers, and in Germany there's this thing called Datenbankherstellerrecht, which means that if you can prove that you made a lot of effort to prepare the data, then it's protected against others using it. And there are lawsuits where people have to demonstrate how much effort they put into preparing the data, because only then it's protected by Datenbankherstellerrecht. And I think you would have the tools to help people in such lawsuits, and if the law aspect interests you, maybe we should be talking sometime after the break, because I think your framework would allow answering these kinds of questions, like justifying that this was a lot of work preparing the data.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is very interesting. Like, I mean, I guess documenting how much work you put into it is all about how much metadata you're actually collecting, and this metadata is, well, spread across all kinds of tools, also in the marketplace. But yeah, I don't know, it wasn't really a question, was it?
A suggestion to tackle.
Yeah, I would enjoy that. Sorry.
Maybe going in the opposite direction. Instead of proving effort, how about making stuff easier? Do you have any thoughts on derived data products? So, for example, in some parts of the data might be secret or confined to certain departments. Do you have any thoughts or ideas on how to support efficient creation of derived data products, so that I can use data even though I might not be able to use all columns or all values in that?
Okay, I'm not 100% sure. So I guess we have something like that also in the data lakes, and our marketplace supports like all of the data source systems that we have. So in other source systems that we have, we're tracking, for instance, like we would have personalized data and so on, and then we have anonymized it and pseudonymized it, whatever, in data lake zones. And like the marketplace will be able to reflect this. So like the marketplace knows or can tell you, we have data on this. In this case, you're not allowed to use it because it's personalized data, but why don't you have a look at these 3 products? They are in different data lake zones and have been pre-processed, so it kind of can suggest or tell you where else to look. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, but I think that's meant to maintain derived products manually. There's nothing that data lake or data database before.
Yeah, no, I guess you'd have to add these products to the marketplace. Yeah, manually.
Thank you again for the talk. We are now moving to the final presentation of the day. it is